Today, we're based in Vail, Colorado. We're global. We have investors in 18 countries and 19 states. And being here in Switzerland means a lot to us because many of our earliest investors were right here in Geneva.
One of the reasons we have a lot of investors here is because Switzerland knows how to produce food. And people tend to be very healthy here as well. The healthcare system and the way that people live their lives is around wellness and community vitality. And I think when in the US, unfortunately, we're not built like that. So a lot of our investment thesis is to try to help recapitalize all of these companies. So we don't have we have 88% of our population in the US is metabolically sick. And we're trying to back companies that are going to help reverse that trend.
The key word is vitality, right?
Vitality.
So how do you define it? What is vitality and how do you support it?
Yeah, that is a great question. So one of the things we now know is ESG, or what Manna Tree calls ESG plus H. And what that means is that if a company is good for the environment, right? So take our cultured dairy company called Good Culture. What that means is that a cow uses something called rotational grazing. That means a cow is on a pasture and it rotationally grazes the land. But there's no feed going into the cow. They're just eating the healthy grass and the bugs that are naturally occurring in nature. And so the cow is happy, the land is healthy because the soil is not degraded, and then the consumer's happy because if you actually have healthy soil with no chemicals or no pesticide and a healthy animal with no antibiotics, the end product to the consumer is actually a better for you product. So that's what we do is we look at better for you, and better for you is actually a category that we know is part of vitality. So today, the health and wellness industry is a $1.2 trillion industry. And other macro trends we're seeing is that 65% of consumers are willing to pay a premium, which is a premium price because they feel like it's an investment in themselves.
Yeah, and COVID has accelerated a lot of these trends. I mean, part of it is, again, in the United States, I don't know, the figures are in Switzerland, but 88% of hospitalizations were people that were obese. And so they've linked that to the quality of your microbiome, lack of fiber in the diet. And so I think immunity is also similar to vitality. You want to live a good life, but you want to prevent yourself and your family from getting sick.
I have three questions I ask to every participant. The first one is about a source of inspiration. I mean, this forum is about leading with purpose. Do you have a good example in mind of a leader with purpose in history or present times?
Actually, two of them are here today. I would say I've always looked up to people like Adam Said and Lauren Bush. I met them when I was really young, 25 years ago. We went on a safari to Africa, but it quickly became a trip into the villages in Africa to see the people were starving. Lauren Bush obviously gone on to do feed. I think that Adam has brought a principled entrepreneur approach into building ACE. And so I think for us, it's more about saying, what is success? Is success about making a lot of money but having no personal life and no health? We look at mission and purpose and how are you leading your life? What are the ethics behind how you're making your money? And are you healthy and happy? That's, to me, mission and purpose. So every step of the way, we've tried to say, how do we lead with values? Our firm is based in Vail, Colorado, and I think we attract people that live out our investment thesis. So I think that you always can learn a lot from the past. I obviously look up to my father in so many ways, but I think that the ways that they did things before doesn't make sense for this generation. So, I would say the best entrepreneurs and founders I look up to are the ones that are authentic and they're vulnerable and they prioritize their health. Because if you don't have your health, you're showing up to work in probably not a positive way and you're not really able to take care of other people and be your best self. So I think for me, it's less about a person and more about making sure that leaders are authentic.
I think for me, I had a mentor once tell me, he said, Ross, if you want to make a big difference in the world and throw touchdown passes and be on covers of magazines, stop doing what you're doing. Your job is to take the ball from the 50-yard line, and talking U.S. football, to the 51. And if you can go 1 yard in your career, then you've done it. And I think that's something that when I meet an entrepreneur that we're looking at an investment and they say, I'm doing this because I'm going to eradicate animals from the planet, I'm going to affect 4 billion people, it actually doesn't resonate with me. I really like the entrepreneur that is saying, I'm going to get up and I'm going to change the health in my community or my state, and it's going to affect 10,000 people, and if I do my job well over 30 years, it's going to make this impact. And if I'm never on the front of Inc. magazine, I'm fine. It's that kind of humble leadership, and I think we need more of those people. I think young people are enamored when they go to conferences like this to say, oh, I want to be that person on the stage one day to do that. That doesn't really matter. I mean, at the end of the day, if you want to create real impact, you want to do it for your family, your friends. It's not for fame.
Look, it's really hard to say no to certain things. And I think that the best leaders, many of them are investors I respect in Switzerland. Bernard Sabrier founded Unigestion. I think they're $20 billion. They could be $200 billion if they wanted to. But he chooses quality of life. He goes to New Zealand, he sails, he likes to slow down. Those are the people I respect. And I think that in this era of extreme rates of mental health, suicide is now the #2 cause of death in the US. There's some issues in society. And I think that if we can't own that, right, we're all talking about physical health, but mental health is a huge part of that. How we live, how we work, how we prioritize our families, that matters. So those are the people I look up to, not I did all this, but I have no friends, and I got divorced, and my kids don't even know me. I don't respect that. And I think that one of the traditions we always did was we came with my father to Europe every summer while he was building his business. So we got to observe what he was doing. Ross is here with his wife and his kids in the same way I was here. It's important to know how to make money, but I also think how you make it's important. One of the things in the firm we will not do, we will not invest in unhealthy food. Unhealthy food makes a lot of money. Of course, we all love to indulge. I get it. But I think we also feel like there's an integrity component of, are we helping the calorie conversion in the rest of the world? That's what we feel like we're trying to be servant leaders to go do, which is inspire others to say, you can make money in a healthy and sustainable way. Now, you might not be the wealthiest person, but you still can achieve real returns as long as you prioritize the values of what we say is ESG plus H.
Second question is about Geneva. I mean, what role, what opportunities do you see for this city in a purpose-driven world?
I can't think of a more picturesque city. I took the picture flying in. Every time I get so excited when you see the lake and the mountains and the green farm right around the city. Those are what everyone dreams of. And clean air. They sound so basic, but in areas today with climate change, with forest fires and land that's not arable and mountains that don't have snow on them anymore. This just is like hope in a jar for me in one picture every time you come to the city. It's a small city. It's a lot of culture, a lot of history here. It's an international city. It's traditionally always been the very welcoming place. So a lot of my family's investors, they were international, but they felt comfortable coming to Geneva and raising their families. And so we're headquartered in Vail, which is a mountain town, but the culture and the welcomingness and wanting to have family dinners here, there's a pace and an understanding in Switzerland of be healthy and enjoy yourself on the weekend. And so that doesn't really exist as much around the world anymore. So this is, to me, a very warm and welcoming place. And many people love Geneva versus Zurich. They're different. Zurich is more of a financial institution credibility place, but here, Geneva, when I think of one thing, I think family, because it's traditionally been a family office, a banker crowd, and a place where families come together.
But there's business as well. I mean, business-wise, Geneva is not like so much behind Zurich.
It's more friendly. It's more approachable. You have things like the IFRC based here. You have other corporations that also believe that what Geneva will do is help attract talent because of the quality of life for families.
And the third question is, we are currently in a coming global crisis with this war in Ukraine that will have huge consequences worldwide, in Africa, in Middle East, etc. We just came out of 2 years of COVID. How do you see the world after these two crises, if there is an end, hopefully?
Blessed to be food investors, because I think food is one of the categories that as recession-proof as you could be. When you look at the 4 major risks today, as you mentioned, COVID, supply chain, geopolitical, and inflation, food allows you to manage risk as best as possible across all 4 of those, because people in a recession, the data shows in 2008, people didn't stop spending on healthier food or going to grocery stores. People eat 3 times a day, and if they're going to eat, they're going to invest in themselves, because that's a control mechanism of, I can't change the world, but I can at least control myself. That's what people do. And so once they start eating healthy, they don't usually stop doing that behavior. They just stop buying other consumer goods that aren't improving their immunity.
I think, yesterday we hosted a Manna Tree luncheon in Zurich, and we had about 45 people, My guess is they're managing 800 billion in assets, so a huge asset pool. But they also talked about how they've hired all of these geopolitical consultants over the years to come in and try to guide them. And if you go back to the last 40 years and all of these hot pockets of geopolitical issues, at the end of the day, I think the consensus was people are really bad at predicting what's going to happen, and it typically hasn't affected. If you look at the S&P 500, private equity, those things are maybe not as correlated as people would like to think them to be. Now, that doesn't mean there's not challenges. And we think that obviously those challenges could last for some time, but there was challenges 5 years ago, and 10 years ago, and 15 years ago, and 20. So as investors, we look at sometimes these downturns and fractures in the geopolitical as actually really good chances to place capital. And you can kind of get in at the ground level, and then once things repair themselves, that's where you make the big money on the other side.
Traditionally, people would say the best way through a crisis is diversification, right? I think the theme now, a decade later, is niche sector managers, because you're going to expect the expertise of, if you know this area, you know this area. And so it's more about identifying the themes that you think will get you through this, and then you go find the managers or the deals or the companies that know that sector. But I think the ones that will struggle more are ones that, the generalists that say we know everything, we can predict anything. I don't see that type of stuff continuing as much.